I still remember the way the morning light fell across the wooden floor that day, soft and golden, as if the world itself hadn't yet realized what I had lost. My son, my only child, was gone. It's strange how silence can be so loud. Every corner of the house echoed with his absence. The old armchair by the window, the dusty guitar he hadn't played in years, the smell of coffee that used to drift down the hallway when he visited me on Sundays. Before we continue with the rest of the story, please comment where you're listening to this from. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. People expect mothers to be strong in grief. They tell you, "He's in a better place," as if those words are supposed to stitch your heart back together. But no one tells you about the empty nights, the cold meals, the way the air feels heavier because you're carrying sorrow everywhere you go. And in the middle of this storm of mourning, there was Sophia, my daughter-in-law. To outsiders, she appeared devastated. She wore black, lowered her eyes, and sighed deeply whenever someone offered condolences. But behind closed doors, I saw something else. A spark in her gaze, a restless tapping of her fingers, as if her grief had an expiration date. She wasn't thinking about my son. She was thinking about what he had left behind. That's when I realized how alone I truly was. Not just because I lost my child, but because the only other adult left in this family seemed to look at me not with compassion, but calculation. The truth, which I kept close to my chest, was that my son had left me more than memories. He had entrusted me with the home we shared, 2 cars, and other things I can't even bring myself to say yet. It wasn't greed that made me keep this secret, it was survival. I knew if Sophia found out, she would claw and bite her way into every piece of it, tearing apart what little I had left of him. There are moments in life when silence feels safer than truth. So, I chose silence. I would watch Sophia move around the house, her heels clicking against the tile, her eyes scanning the photographs on the wall, as if each frame might hold a key to her future. She never lingered on his smile in those pictures, never paused at the sound of his laughter frozen in time. She was searching for something else, something that could be sold, owned, possessed. My grandson, Lucas, was too young to understand. He would sit on the carpet, playing with his toy cars, innocent to the tension simmering above his head. Sometimes he'd look up at me and ask, "Grandma, why are you sad?" And I would force a smile, pat his hair and whisper, "Because I miss your daddy." But what I couldn't say was, "I'm sad because I can already see the storm coming for you. For us." I wanted to believe that love and blood were enough to bind a family together. But after my son's death, I learned something harsh. Loss reveals the truth in people. Some crumble, some heal, and some, like Sophia, sharpen their claws. That night, as I tucked Lucas into bed, I heard Sophia on the phone in the kitchen. Her voice was low, hurried, but I caught fragments. Words like money, house, sell. My chest tightened. She was planning already, plotting even before the ashes had settled. I went to my room, closed the door, and sat in the dark. My son's will was in the drawer beside me. I touched the envelope, tracing the edges with trembling fingers. He had chosen me to carry his legacy, not her, me. And though I hadn't yet said the words aloud, I made myself a promise. She will not take what he entrusted to me. Not the house, not the cars, not the future he wanted for Lucas. The first battle hadn't even begun, but the war was already on its way. The days after the funeral blurred together. People came and went with their casseroles and sympathy cards, offering hugs that felt like brief patches on a wound that would never close. And through it all, I stayed quiet. My grief was raw, but it wasn't the only thing I was carrying. I was carrying the secret too, the will, the truth, the weight of my son's last wishes. Sophia noticed something about me. I could tell. Her eyes lingered when I closed drawers, when I tucked papers into my purse, when I locked the desk in the study. She wasn't grieving anymore. She was hunting. One evening, as the sun sank low and painted the living room in shades of orange, she sat across from me, swirling her glass of wine. "This house must be hard for you," she said softly. "Too many memories, right?" Her words dripped with honey, but her eyes were sharp. I just nodded, murmured something about memories being both a blessing and a burden. But deep down, I knew what she was really saying. Sell it. Hand it over. Make it mine. I wanted to scream that this house was more than bricks and paint. It was the place where my son took his first steps, where he brought home his first report card, where he introduced me to Sophia herself. It held echoes of birthdays and laughter, of Sunday mornings and Christmas nights. It was not merchandise to be bartered away. Still, I said nothing, because my silence was my shield. When I lay awake at night, I would pull out the will from the drawer beside my bed. My son's handwriting stared back at me, steady and sure. He had trusted me to carry what mattered: the house, the cars, and yes, the rest. He hadn't left them to Sophia, and I knew exactly why. He had seen through her long before I did. But it was one thing to have the will, and another to live with it in secret. Every conversation with Sophia became a dance, every glance a battlefield. She started making little comments in front of Lucas, too, planting seeds. Wouldn't it be nice if Grandma lived somewhere smaller, and we had a big backyard instead? She'd say with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Lucas would look at me, confused, and I'd feel my chest tighten. She was trying to turn even him into a weapon. I didn't answer. I just smiled at Lucas, the kind of smile meant to say, "Don't worry, darling. This is still our home." But inside, I was boiling. One night, after Lucas had gone to bed, I found Sophia in the study, standing by the locked desk. She jumped when she saw me. "I was just looking for a pen," she said quickly. I didn't believe her for a second. I stood there in the doorway, clutching the frame to keep myself steady, and I thought, how long can I keep this secret? How long before she tears everything apart trying to get it from me? The answer, I knew, was as long as it took, because I would rather die clutching my son's will than hand it over to someone who saw his death as a business opportunity. That was the night I realized my silence wasn't just a choice anymore, it was a battle plan. It didn't take long before Sophia's mask began to slip. At first, her comments were subtle, laced with charm, the way a snake might coil itself in the grass, silent but dangerous. But as weeks passed, her restraint eroded. She began circling the house like it was prey. Every morning she'd linger in the kitchen, running her fingers along the cabinets, as though measuring their worth. "These counters could use updating," she mused once, her voice light, but her eyes calculating. Another time, she stood in the garage, tapping one of the cars my son had left behind. "A shame to let it sit here gathering dust. I could put it to good use." Her words weren't suggestions. They were warnings. I could feel the pressure mounting, as if every day she was tightening a noose around the life my son had entrusted to me. One afternoon while I was folding laundry, she appeared in the doorway with Lucas by her side. "Mom," she said, a title she used only when she wanted something. "Don't you think it's time to simplify things? You're older now, taking care of this house, these cars. It must be exhausting." Her tone was sweet, but it stung. Exhausting? This home was the last piece of my son I had left. These cars had carried him to his first job interview, to family trips, to the hospital the night Lucas was born. They weren't burdens. They were sacred. Lucas looked between us, sensing the tension but too young to understand. His small voice broke the silence. "Grandma, are we moving?" I swallowed hard, forcing a smile. No, sweetheart, I said, kneeling down to him. We're not moving. This is our home. Sophia's lips tightened. She didn't argue in front of him, but her eyes burned with frustration. That night, I found a realtor's card tucked into the stack of mail on the counter. My heart sank. She wasn't waiting anymore. She was plotting moves behind my back. I sat at the table long after everyone had gone to bed, staring at that card. My son's will was upstairs, safe in my drawer. His words were my shield, but Sophia didn't know that. And until she did, she would keep circling, pressing, scheming. The next morning, I tried something I hadn't before. I watched her. I studied the way she looked at Lucas, the way her smile never reached her eyes when he laughed. I noticed how quickly she brushed him aside when he sought her attention, how she handed him off to me as though he were another task on her list. It struck me then. My son had seen this too. That's why he hadn't left it all to her. He had known that his wife loved the idea of wealth more than the reality of family. But knowing that didn't make living with her any easier. One evening, while Lucas played on the rug, Sophia leaned close to me. Her voice was low, but her words were sharp as glass. "You're not going to live forever," she whispered. "Why not make things easier for both of us?" I froze. Her breath was warm on my ear, but her words chilled me to the bone. I wanted to scream, to tell her the truth, that everything had already been written, that my son had chosen me, not her. But I bit my tongue, because revealing that secret too soon would be like lighting a match in a room filled with gasoline. Instead, I smiled faintly, pretending not to notice the venom in her tone. "Some things," I told her, my voice steady, "are worth holding on to." She leaned back, studying me as though trying to read the lines of my face, to pry open the lock I kept so tightly closed. And in that moment, I knew. The battle lines had been drawn. She wasn't just circling anymore. She was preparing to strike. Sophia's patience finally snapped. Subtle hints no longer satisfied her. She wanted results quickly, ruthlessly, and she began recruiting allies. It started small. A neighbor stopped by one morning with a curious question. "Sophia mentioned you were thinking about downsizing. Do you want me to recommend an agent?" I forced a polite smile, but inside my stomach churned. Downsizing? That word had never once left my lips. Soon after, a banker called about preliminary inquiries on transferring the car titles. My heart hammered as I gripped the phone, cold realization sinking in. Sophia was testing the waters, seeing how far she could push before I noticed. But I noticed everything. At dinner that week, she played her next card. Sitting across the table, she brought up the topic in front of Lucas. "Mom," she said sweetly, "I've been speaking to a financial advisor. He thinks it's better if we put the house and the cars in my name. You won't have to worry about taxes, maintenance, or any of the stress. It's the practical thing to do." Her voice was smooth, rehearsed, as if she'd practiced it in the mirror. I set down my fork slowly. The clink of metal against porcelain cut through the silence. Lucas froze mid-bite, his wide eyes darting between us. "Practical for whom?" I asked evenly. Sophia's smile faltered, then returned. "For all of us, of course." Think of Lucas. Think of Lucas. Those 3 words twisted like a knife. She was using my grandson as leverage, the one soul I would sacrifice anything for. I didn't raise my voice. Instead, I leaned forward, steady and deliberate. "Your advisor doesn't decide what happens here. Neither do you. This house, these cars, they're not yours to claim." Her eyes narrowed, but she said nothing more that night. Still, her tactics grew bolder. She started making late-night phone calls, hushed conversations behind closed doors. Once, I caught her rifling through drawers in the study again, her fingers trembling with frustration. "You're paranoid," she snapped when I confronted her. "I was just organizing." Organizing? Number. She was scavenging for documents, for deeds, for the will she suspected existed, but hadn't yet found. And then came the lawyer. A man in a pressed suit arrived at my door one afternoon, carrying a briefcase and a smile too polished to be sincere. "Mrs. Allen," he said, "Sophia has asked me to help streamline some of your affairs. She's concerned about your well-being." Concerned. That word nearly made me laugh. Concern was not what drove Sophia. It was greed, dressed in silk. I listened politely, but my silence was a wall he couldn't scale. I didn't confirm or deny anything. I simply nodded, thanked him for his time, and shut the door firmly behind him. When Sophia returned home that evening, her eyes were searching, hungry for an update. "Did you speak with him?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "I did," I replied. "And?" I smiled faintly. "I told him nothing." Her face darkened, and in that instant, I saw the truth. The mask was gone. She wasn't pretending anymore. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," she hissed. "And you," I answered, my voice low but steady, "are forgetting who my son trusted." The words hung between us like thunder. For the first time, she didn't have a quick reply. That night, as I tucked Lucas into bed, he asked me quietly, "Grandma, why is Mommy always angry with you?" I brushed his hair back and kissed his forehead. "Because," I whispered, "some people don't understand that love is worth more than things." But inside, I knew the storm was far from over. Sophia wasn't finished. She was regrouping, plotting her next move, and if I wasn't careful, her ambition could tear everything apart. The weeks that followed felt like living under siege. Sophia no longer tried to hide her intentions. She prowled the house as though she already owned it, rearranging furniture, clearing out closets, even talking about renovations that no one had agreed upon. One morning, I found her in the garage, the hood of one of the cars lifted. She didn't notice me at first, her hands running along the engine as if she were calculating its worth. When I asked what she was doing, she jumped, then laughed nervously. "Just checking to see if it still runs," she said. But her eyes told the truth. She was imagining the price tag. That evening, she called Lucas into the living room. "Honey," she said sweetly, "wouldn't it be fun to live somewhere new? Maybe a bigger house with a pool?" Lucas's face lit up for a moment. At his age, the idea of a pool was magic. But when his gaze shifted to me, his excitement dimmed. "I don't want to move," he whispered. "I like it here with Grandma." Sophia's smile cracked. Her plan to use him against me had backfired, and for the first time, she looked genuinely rattled. But desperation makes people reckless. The very next week, a thick envelope arrived in the mail legal documents. Sophia had filed for guardianship over me, claiming I was unfit to manage property and finances at my age. My hands trembled as I held the papers. Guardianship. It wasn't just greed anymore. She wanted power, complete control. I sat at the table, the weight of my son's absence pressing down harder than ever. He had trusted me to protect what he left behind, but more importantly, to protect Lucas. And now his widow was trying to strip me of both. That night, I confronted her. She didn't deny it. In fact, she looked almost relieved that the truth was out. "You're clinging to things you can't handle," she said coldly. "It's time someone responsible stepped in. The court will see it my way." I felt a calm I hadn't expected. Maybe because, deep down, I knew she was overplaying her hand. "The court?" I repeated. "Then let them see everything." Let them read every line of his will. Her eyes widened. Just for a flicker of a second, fear crossed her face. She didn't know what the will said, and that ignorance was my armor. You think you've hidden something, she sneered. But secrets don't last forever. Neither does greed, I replied softly. For the first time, she didn't have a retort. She stormed off, slamming her bedroom door so hard the walls shook. Later, when the house was silent, I sat with Lucas on the porch. He leaned against me, his small hand resting on mine. "Grandma," he asked, "why does Mommy fight with you all the time?" I hesitated, searching for words a child could understand. "Because sometimes people forget what's important," I said gently. "They think things can make them happy. But love is the only thing that really lasts." He nodded slowly, though I could see the confusion in his eyes. Still, he pressed closer, as if my presence alone gave him the safety his mother could not. In that moment, I realized the fight wasn't just about a house or cars. It was about a legacy, my son's legacy, and whether it would be honored or destroyed. Sophia could bring her lawyers, her schemes, her threats, but I had something stronger: truth, and the will of the man we both claimed to love. And I was prepared to defend it, no matter the cost. The days between the notice and the first court date stretched like taut wire. Sophia carried herself with a new arrogance, convinced she had already won. She began dropping phrases like, "when the house is sold," or "once the cars are transferred," as if the ink were already dry. But behind the bravado, I saw her desperation growing. She knew nothing of the will. That ignorance gnawed at her, even as she tried to mask it. One evening, I overheard her in Lucas's room. She was tucking him in, her voice syrupy but strained. "Wouldn't it be wonderful if we had a big new house, sweetheart? With a bigger bedroom just for you, and maybe a playroom too? Grandma is too old to keep up with everything, but if we had our own place, you could have so much more." Her words dripped with manipulation. I stood in the hallway, hidden in the shadows, listening as Lucas shifted uncomfortably under his blanket. "I don't want a new house," he murmured. "I want to stay here, with Grandma." Sophia's tone sharpened, though she quickly tried to soften it. "But darling, Grandma can't always take care of you. Don't you want Mommy to be happy?" That night, after she left, Lucas crept into my room, clutching his stuffed bear. His eyes were wide with worry. "Grandma, is she going to take me away?" he whispered. I gathered him into my arms, holding him as tightly as I dared. "No one will take you from me, Lucas," I promised. "Your father wanted you safe here, and that's where you'll stay." Inside, though, I knew promises weren't enough. I needed action. The next morning I drove into town. The air was crisp, the kind that clears the mind. At the lawyer's office, I asked to speak with Mr. Harding, the man who had handled my son's affairs. He welcomed me kindly, his eyes softening when I explained the situation. "You were wise not to show her anything yet," he said. "The will is airtight. Your son made it clear. The property, the cars, everything goes to you, with Lucas as the eventual heir. Sophia was left an allowance enough to live on, but nothing that would grant her control." Hearing the words aloud steadied me like an anchor in stormy seas. "She's trying to claim guardianship over me," I admitted quietly. Mr. Harding nodded. "The court will laugh at that, given your health and clarity. But I'll prepare documentation. When the time comes, we'll be ready." On the drive home, I felt the first flicker of peace in weeks. My son's foresight had given me strength. He had trusted me to guard his legacy, and I would not fail him. That evening, Sophia cornered me in the kitchen. Her eyes were sharp, glittering with frustration. I know you went into town, she hissed. Who did you see? I dried my hands slowly, refusing to match her fury. An old friend, I replied evenly. She slammed her palm against the counter. You think you can outmaneuver me? I'll make sure the court sees the truth. You're too old, too stubborn, too set in your ways. They'll side with me. I met her gaze, unflinching. Maybe. But courts don't side with greed. Her lips curled into a sneer, but she had no answer. She stormed off again, muttering under her breath. As the house settled into uneasy silence, I sat in my chair, Lucas asleep upstairs. The night air carried the scent of rain, and with it came a quiet clarity. Sophia was fighting for wealth, but I was fighting for love, for memory, for the promise I had whispered to my son the night before they lowered him into the earth. I'll take care of him. I'll keep him safe. And when the storm broke, I knew whose strength would last. The courthouse smelled faintly of old wood and polish, the kind of place where echoes of past battles linger. Lucas held my hand tightly as we walked in, his small fingers trembling. I bent down and whispered, "It's going to be all right, sweetheart." He nodded, though the fear in his eyes told another story. Sophia arrived in a swirl of perfume and false confidence. Her heels clicked sharply against the floor, each step echoing like a declaration of victory she hadn't yet earned. Richard trailed behind her, avoiding my gaze, his face pale. I wondered if he regretted getting tangled in her schemes, or if regret was beyond him now. Inside the courtroom, Sophia's lawyer stood tall, his voice smooth and rehearsed. "Your Honor," he began, "this case is not about greed. It is about responsibility. My client, Sophia, only wishes to provide a stable home for her son. Unfortunately, the child's grandmother, while well-meaning, is no longer capable of managing the complexities of property, finances, and guardianship." Every word felt like a dagger aimed at me. But I kept my head high, hands folded calmly in my lap. Then it was Mr. Harding's turn. He rose slowly, adjusting his glasses, and with deliberate clarity said, "Your Honor, this is not a case about stability. It is a case about intention. The will left by the deceased father is explicit. The house, the vehicles, and all assets were entrusted to his mother. Why? Because he trusted her to raise his son with love, not ambition. The documents prove it beyond question." Gasps rustled through the courtroom. I caught Sophia stiffening in her seat, her painted smile faltering. She hadn't expected the will to be revealed so soon. The judge leaned forward, scanning the papers Mr. Harding presented. Silence stretched, heavy and absolute. Sophia couldn't bear it. She leapt to her feet. "He promised me more," she cried, her voice shrill. "He said I would be taken care of." The judge fixed her with a steady gaze. "Promises spoken in private carry no weight here, ma'am. The only truth we recognize is written before us." Sophia sat down hard, her face flushed red. For the first time, she looked less like a victor and more like someone losing ground beneath her feet. Lucas glanced at me, his eyes wide but shining with a flicker of hope. I gave his hand a gentle squeeze. The proceedings continued, each side presenting arguments, but the tide had shifted. The judge had seen the truth. The gallery whispered in hushed tones, many casting sympathetic glances my way, while Sophia shrank deeper into her chair. For the first time in a long while, I felt the scales tipping not toward greed, but toward justice. When the judge called my name, I rose slowly. My knees ached, but my voice was steady as I took the stand. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath. "I am not here for houses or cars," I began softly. "I am here because my son, before he passed, trusted me with his child. He knew me. He knew the kind of home I would give. A home filled with love, not conditions. I may be older, yes, but my heart, my mind, and my strength are bound to that boy. I pointed gently toward Lucas, who sat clutching his bear in the gallery. He is my purpose, and I will protect him until my last breath. The judge listened without interruption, his expression unreadable. For a moment, silence stretched across the room. Then, unexpectedly, Lucas stood. His small voice trembled, but it carried through the quiet chamber. "I want to stay with Grandma," he said. "She makes me feel safe." A murmur rippled through the gallery. Even the judge's eyes softened as he nodded for Lucas to sit again. Sophia tried to object, rising halfway to her feet. "He's just a child. He doesn't know what's best for him." But the judge silenced her with a firm gesture. "Sometimes, children know far more than we give them credit for." I felt tears sting my eyes, but I blinked them back. That moment, simple yet powerful, carried more weight than any stack of documents. Love had spoken for itself, and for the first time, I truly believed we would win.